Okay, I've got 5:30, so are we recording? Mm-hmm. All right, it's 5:30, and I'm going to call the meeting to order. This is the work session meeting for October 4th for City of Minnetrista. And present this evening are David Abel, our Community Development Director, Brian Grimm, our Finance Director, Mike Baroni, our Administrator. I'm Lisa Whalen, I'm the Mayor, and we have two council members absent this evening. That's Pam Mortensen and John Chumperlin, and the two that are present are Ann McGregor and Kathleen Refkin. And then we have also our City Engineer, Adam Gabois, and then we have our Public Works Superintendent, Gary Peters, and then also Director of Administration, Ali Pulfus, and then I'm assuming we have also with WSB for roads, Matt, thank you. All right, with that, we have three items on our work session agenda, and that's first our water fund budget discussion. Second is the pavement management plan, and then thirdly, we'll City Administrators, the search firm discussion. With that, I'll turn it over to Brian.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor and Council, and I'll try to be as summarized as possible, seeing I know we got the three items, and being a math person, I know that's 20, I guess, or whatever, something close to that or whatever, so
you have now 19 minutes.
I was going to talk about it. I came back. I was at my son's soccer game, and I can see there's a lot of people in the audience tonight. Probably they're all enjoying the evening, which is good. But I'll dive into the water stuff here. So basically, what this is the preliminary discussion for our 2022 water budget, as well. I mean, I guess it's multiple facets, as well as what to set our rates at. Obviously, that's on our revenue side, and then our capital components in our operations is more on our expenditure side. Probably just going to hit a few of the highlights in the memo and then dive into the documents. So current cash balance in the fund, and you'll have the third quarter report at the next meeting, but is about a little under 1.5 million, 1,478,000 is noted there. The southern water tower, the southwest water tower, should be finished up this year, and there's about, I made the note there, about $575,000 left on the contract. And I guess to go back a couple probably budget cycles, when we did the water tower, we didn't bond for the full $2.5 million project. We did $2 million, and we're spending down some of the funds. Well, this is now spending down some of the funds, so we're projected to end up somewhere below $1 million, maybe $800,000-900,000 is where I have it at year end.
That's about where we thought we'd be.
Yeah, I think it's the 600,000 to $1 million. It's somewhere between 500,000 and $1 million is depending on how it all shook out. So I think we're tracking for that. And for historical perspective, there made the note that we have been raising the water rates, including the base rate and the tier rates, by 4%. At least the last 4 or 5 years. I think back to when we were implemented even the planning for the water treatment plants once they went online. So it's been 5, 6, 7 years we've been increasing the rates across the board by 4%. We haven't been doing like certain tiers at 6 and some at 4. I mean, I guess there's different ways we could look at that, but that's how we've historically been doing it the last several years. And then as far as the potential future capital infrastructure items that were added to the plan for 2022. There's wells in the pilot study. I think it came to about 700,000. And I plugged in a line to do either a debt issuance or some interfund financing in the financial plan, just because we wouldn't have about 800,000 on hand without spending our fund balance down to nothing. So, and then also the estimated cost for a new or third water treatment plant were plugged in, and whether that's in 2023, 24, I think we just at least plugged that into the plan based on our discussions here recently. So maybe the way to do it is to jump ahead to page 8, which is, basically it's what we just talked about as some of the capital items there. You can see the wells 8 and 9 are estimated to be about 700,000 there for 2022. Pilot study 50,000, and then a third water treatment plant I plugged in just to be conservative about $10 million and could spill over a couple years, so that's where some of the bigger ticket items, as well as, each year we usually been trying to look at a well a year or so, that were those line items that talk about inspect and rehab well. We just did well 2A this year, and it's so we did that one. I don't know if anyone has any question on some of the capital items, maybe. Otherwise, I'll jump back to the.
So, Brian, maybe this should be part of our discussion at some point, maybe tonight, or I'm not sure when, but the ARP funds that we received, or we received half, and then we'll receive another half whenever, but the total that we're receiving should be around $860,000.
Sure.
So I'm wondering if this time would be an appropriate time to talk about how we might want to spend that, because those ARPA funds could be used. Some of them could be used for this.
Correct. Yep.
And so I'm thinking we really should be designating a percentage of them for this, one, to plug into this, and two, because we have 2 years in which to designate it. I don't think you have to have the project completed.
Yeah, I think
you have to know maybe the project has to be started or something.
Yeah, I think it has to do with whether a contract or something has to be entered into by like summer of 2024.
Right.
And then you have till 2026 to actually expend the funds and finish, which is a little different when the CARES money was sort of like, here you go, and now you got to spend it real quick. The ARPA funds, it gives for more planning.
But it may, I'm not sure how much you would, so we can also spend it on broadband. So I want to make sure that we have some for broadband and then maybe some for water. So somehow we should come up with a formula to determine how percentage-wise how much we should spend on the water portion of it, if that's what we want to do. My thought was, how many people, let's just say on a population or either on a housing unit basis, percentage-wise, are on city water. That might help us to some extent. I don't know. If we have 1,200 or...
I was going to say it's probably 60%, or maybe a little 60 to 65, because I think we're over 1,800 connections now. I think we're at 18, last count was like 1840 something, 1840,
okay.
50,
The reason I'm saying a percentage that's maybe somehow linked to population or people that are on the system is because otherwise we're just kind of saying, well, let's use this much for water and let's use this. We're just kind of arbitrarily picking numbers out of the sky, so to speak. Whereas if we say, well, we determine that this is how many water users there are, so therefore we should use percentage-wise this amount of money for that because it benefits those people. And then the people that are that need broadband and are either unserved or underserved or need better service, there's a percentage there we should maybe use. I mean, that might be one way of doing it.
Yeah, that makes sense as far as whether it's, because the 2/3 of the city's on water, so maybe you'd allocate 2/3 of it there, and then knowing that broadband, there's X amount of people on it, maybe it's 600,000 and 200,000. I'm just real rough.
I'm just whatever it is.
That's up for the council to decide.
This is another perspective. I had talked to Mike this morning about getting more specific about the timeline. There's a bunch of stuff that we have that starts in 2023 on this chart that perhaps with that extra money we could put a portion of that and make things happen faster and start it in 2022 and then add up what that would cost for, I'm thinking maybe the last half of 2022, and maybe that gives us our percentage.
You mean move like well 3, well 4, and well 5 rehab up, or other stuff?
And again, I don't know what can be done or can't be done. I had talked to Mike this morning with the water tower maintenance for the Kings Point. I think Mike had said that might have to wait until 2023, but if there's any possibility some of that could shift into 2022, I think that's probably good. I think that's a good idea, don't know. And then, and then if the wells can be drilled in the first 6 months or whatever, maybe we could put some of the water treatment plant money into 2022, last quarter, last something.
I'm not sure if the wells can be drilled in 22.
Oh, that's, okay.
We'd have to ask Greg. Do you have an idea?
I think it all really depends on the pilot.
Yeah, would we push it to drill early 2022?
Yeah.
Because we had to go through all the process first, you doing the pilot, where we're going to find it and do the
Right.
pilot test, then even get DNR approval yet, so.
Right. Okay, so we might be pushing it, but, and of course we can move, I mean, we can shift this. I'm just saying we need to consider some amount of those ARPA dollars in this
Correct, yeah. No, I
program.
think, yeah.
So where we spend, I don't think it matters if we spend it on wells or we spend it on water treatment plants, as long it's all in the water fund. Right.
And some of that will come into play. Yeah, I think I referenced earlier. I plugged in like some sort of financing just to make the cash flow work, or whether it's internal or external, about $800,000. But if the council allocates $600,000 of ARPA
Right.
funds to that, well, then it doesn't make sense to go and even consider really issuing any outside debt. Maybe then
Right.
you borrow from another fund for a couple $100,000, or just to make everything cash flow, or you spend down a little more
Right.
fund balance, or
Right.
it gives a little more flexibility then.
So at what point would the council have to decide the dollar amount that we would want to put into the water fund, and how much money we would want to put into the broadband fund?
As far as 2022's budget is probably sooner rather than later, but as far as the timelines that we just discussed, we
Okay.
obviously have more time. And I think from talking to other finance directors, I think that's what the discussions that they're starting to happen at city council level right now is, how do we want to, obviously we get this much money, some other ones get this much, and how to allocate it into what. And I think we've got two really good buckets to potentially put it, the water and the broadband. I know, some cities are looking at, they have community centers and all that kind of stuff, but I think we have enough, so much needs.
I just think with the water. And
yeah, I mean, we just
broadband.
have, it makes
I
sense.
don't know that our city has, I'm trying to think of any other, sewer. We can put it into sewer,
That'd be the third
water.
one. That would be the main.
But I
believe.
think we're okay in the sewer fund, and we're not planning any major projects. So, seems to me like it should go into the water and into the broadband.
No, I
So,
would agree. Yeah.
And I think, so here's another question. So if we were to allocate let's just say 60-40, let's just say, would we then allocate the 430, 60-40 in 22, or would we allocate, when do we get the second part? I guess that's
It's a year from when we receive the first distribution. It's within 12 months, so it's basically next
summer of 22.
Yeah.
So next summer
So
we'll
it'd be
have the full amount.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So we can basically incorporate that all into.
Yeah,
See, we're
okay.
talking about 22's budget.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So no, that would be helpful if the council is ready to have those discussions and allocations. That it would obviously be a boon to this fund, or and then also the cable fund would be where the broadband money would sit, or so.
Do you guys, the council,
Scott?
would you want us to maybe come up with something
Recommendation.
preliminary recommendation and then have you react to it, or do you guys want to go ahead and just kind of brainstorm on your own? Either way is fine with us, but maybe if we come up with, based on what I'm hearing, maybe we come up with something that focuses on water and then something else that focuses on the broadband. We're not exactly sure. I mean, we have one contract on tonight for one of the providers.
Right.
We don't know where we stand on the broadband grant. I don't even know if it's out yet. I mean, it seems really...
There hasn't been anything
Yeah.
yet.
I mean, they were
No
supposed to be
update.
September, and here it is October 4. We got nothing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think the deadline's going to change, so we're just going to be scrambling between now and the end of the calendar year. So we don't know that. I know we're going to apply, but we don't know what our...
They're waiting on the state.
Yeah. So,
Well, maybe
it's
if,
up to you folks.
But
I
as
guess
far
the-
as the number of homes, you're looking at like 270, 280
Yeah.
homes.
right,
If you're trying to figure out percentages.
Right.
but we also need to know how much it would cost, or what the city's participation for broadband would be.
I think they're going to ask for 10% of 1.87 million. So
Okay.
187,000.
Okay, and we already have that in our broadband, in our communications
Mm-hmm.
fund balance, but I'm thinking, but will that give the whole, will that cover the whole city?
If we get the grant, yes.
Yes,
Okay,
that's what we've heard.
A big if, but yes.
Okay.
If we get the grant.
and if we don't get the grant, then maybe we would want to spend some more of the ARP dollars in order to do something with
If
it.
that's,
We can always switch things out of buckets, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
So if we
Yeah.
put the money that we
True.
really need into a broadband bucket,
Yeah.
then it's there.
Right.
And if we don't need it, we'll put someplace else.
Right.
So.
Yeah,
Well, money,
Yeah.
it sounds like we already have the money that would cover the 187,000 though, don't we? In
Yeah, we have the,
Yes.
yeah, the,
Yes, we have enough in there
we have the
already.
430 on hand. Or
Yeah, so
in
if
our
it stays
hand.
like that, we wouldn't need any of the art money to cover that.
correct.
Yeah.
right.
And just, yeah, logistically right now, I've put the money, and it's recommended to put it in like a special revenue fund. And I think you'll see even again in the third quarter report, you'll see basically 430,000 just sitting there in a fund by itself. Well, that came this summer.
Right.
So, and then what you do is probably transfer the money to the water fund or to the cable fund or however you decide to do it. So,
Well, maybe Ann's suggestion, even if you put money in the broadband fund and you don't use all of it, you could pull it out and then put it back into the water fund.
Yeah.
So then let me ask, do you want staff to make a recommendation in terms of how much we should split it right now?
I'm going to say yes. Because as they're doing this, they may come up with other buckets that we're not even thinking about right now. And we haven't talked about paving. Can paving come into
No.
that?
No.
No, it's just water, sewer.
So, but you might come up with other buckets that we might need too. So I would say yes. I would say staff should.
Come up with a formula that we can
Well, does
justify, I guess.
Does it make sense? So we got 50% this year. Does
Yeah.
it make sense just to put that in the water because we know we're going to use that in the water, and then worry about allocating the
Next
next
year.
half next year? Because we'll know about broadband then too. Versus
Right.
right now, we completely know we need the $400,000 in the water fund.
And we know we have the 250 already in the broadband fund.
Yeah.
So if we needed it right away.
Yeah, you could do
Yeah.
that.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
That'd save us some
yeah,
time.
right. And we know
But
we
yeah.
need it, so
Yeah.
we're going to
Yeah.
put more than that in the water fund no matter what, because it'd be over 50%. So
Hey, Ann,
yeah.
do you want to move your microphone?
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Oh, you can't hear me.
I can, the recording might not be.
Yeah, I think
Thanks.
that's a good approach. Mhm. Yeah.
So,
Save some work.
yeah, if that sounds good. So maybe if everyone's good on some of how those capital items are reflected on page 8, at least for now. I mean, obviously things in 2023 and 24 we'll keep talking about as well as as they get closer.
So let me just ask a question. How can we put so what we had talked originally about is once the southwest water tower comes online, then we said then we could do the rehab of the Kings Point water tower. Why have we moved? So my understanding was we were going to do that in 22. Why have we moved it to 23? What's the rationale?
Make sure the kinks are out of the tower first and everything's flowing well. Then second off, it'll take quite a while to get all the documentation done, and
Okay.
we want to get it done on. I don't want to be running into fall again like we did last time. I'd rather get done in the spring right away, so we're prepared for 2023. We can do it right away as soon as the weather turns, so that we're not running into this October, November issue again for
Okay.
painting wise.
I think just
Okay.
logistically wise, it
Okay. All right.
timing wise will fit better to have it in 2023 like you
Yeah,
did.
I know Gary had a lot of consternation, me too, but I think weren't they painting in like November, December? And we had our fingers crossed. I think.
They were. I just don't want to. I mean, knock on wood, we had great weather, but you never know, it could turn. And I'd rather have it during the summer, be done, and then we're good. So
Okay.
get it done right away in spring, and instead of trying to battle the elements.
What is the maintenance on it besides repainting it?
What's that?
What is the maintenance besides repainting?
A lot of interior work, a lot of repair work inside. The major thing is going to be to remove the cathodic system, which is in there, which is basically the anti-corrosion system that no longer works. Just doing a lot of little maintenance here and there. So, I mean, there's not a lot, but the stripping of the tower and the repainting will take the bulk of the time.
Are they going to drain the whole tower?
Pardon?
They have to drain the entire tower, right?
Yes. Yep. They're going to
I
have
know
to
one
just.
time when we did some maintenance, they actually sent divers in.
That was a
Yeah.
different deal.
Yeah, that was for clean. Just a cleaning, they can do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
That was
Just-
pre-water treatment.
So we're gonna get water in Woodland Cove from the new tower then?
Yes,
Yeah,
and through the plant.
that's the idea.
And through the plant. So with the stuff that's on the agenda for tonight with the SCADA system will help with getting some transducers put in there, which will help keep the plant online so we can have pressure in the system. So not only have that tower, but also the plant will run now, not like in the north system. So we will get this running so it'll always have water flowing.
Okay,
Good.
all right.
Okay. So maybe in the, what am I trying to say, just for time purposes, I'll jump back to page 4, which I guess the main item there, probably I'd like council's feedback on, is the number 1 there, the rates inflation. So as you can see there, we've pretty much adjusted our rates pretty much on our current tiers of about 4% a year, and then we've pretty much had a couple percent growth or so from new homes. So that's been the factor that I guess what we've been basing our revenue projections on. So knowing that there's some of this other upcoming infrastructure that's going to schedule to take place in 2022 and beyond, I've adjusted those up a little bit for years 22, 23, 24 to maybe 6-9%, and there's ways we could even look at it. Maybe we keep the first tier at 4%, and maybe we do 6 and 8% on the next 2 tiers. I guess a lot of different ways to try to structure it. And I know one of the things we're trying to encourage is conservation. So maybe instead of doing 4% each tier, maybe that it comes with more of a price once you get to tiers 2 and 3. It's or 4, 6, 8, 4, 7, 10. I guess
I think the first tier should be lower because people have to use water.
Yeah.
And I think the second and third tiers should be higher. So that's just my opinion. If we do a 4% or even a 3% on tier 1,
Or 3,
and then
6,
you do
9 or something.
6 and 9 on 2 and 3.
And obviously, if people keep using it, it raises revenue. Otherwise, it modifies their behavior, I guess. So it's a win-win, or it should be for the city. So,
Yep.
Any thoughts?
The only thing I would add to that is, I forget exactly, I apologize, who I speaking with today about this. We were talking about rates. I do know that generally we approve the fee schedule, which includes rates like this later this year for next year, so we do have a little bit of time. But the last time we did a rate survey was, 2015?
2014.
2014.
Yeah, so.
And so I think Ellers did that, so we could hire them again to do an additional rate study. Or one of the other things, we could try to do it internally with staff. We know the cities that they surveyed. We know what their rates were and our rates were back then, and we could find out what they're doing and bring that back. But I think we should probably take a look at it. I would like council members to be able to make a decision on how to fund the rates for this and where to put these tiers based on some data that you might get from neighboring cities and where they're at. I don't want to put you in a tough spot where if we go to 9%, that is far and above what other neighboring cities are doing. That puts you guys in a tough spot. But again, no, we have some pretty high water users, as we were talking about a little earlier. So maybe modifying behavior is a good thing, but there's going to be a balance I think we need to strike there. So I like
It's really
Brian's.
hard to do comparisons because our issue is we don't have a lot of water users. What do we have? 1,250 on the South Central system, 1,250 on the South Central system, and we have about 600 maybe on the Northern system. So
That's enough, I think.
It's 2,000 homes.
Yeah.
Getting there, yeah.
Yeah, but I'm saying that to compare it to other communities, they may have bigger systems, but they also have a lot more users.
Yeah,
Sure.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. And they may have commercial, industrial, and things
Right.
of that nature, so that kind of factor into that, and we don't. So
So the
that was one
cost-
reason why Ellers did the survey. They were able to make it more of an apples-apples kind of
Yeah, right.
comparison, being able to take out what contribution, let's say the city of Mound, they have a business area and commercial,
Right.
industrial. I mean, what does that factor into their rates, How
But
much?
they don't have a water treatment plant either.
No, but
So-
they still have
Yeah.
rates.
Yeah.
No,
Right.
and their rates, I think, are on the high end.
They're on the
of
high end.
Their rates
water
are high.
treatment,
Yeah, their rates
which
are
is
high,
surprising,
yeah.
but I guess the
Yeah.
other
Yeah.
Exactly.
And their water is horrible. That's
Relatively
what
speaking.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. If I had to guess right now, our rates, and on page 15, I had attached the what our current water utility rates are right now for residential, commercial, schools, and then the water connection fee. But I think when we did our study in 2014-15, so 7-8 years ago, we were on the lower to middle end. Obviously, that's before we've done the 4% a year for multiple years now. And I do remember Mound back then was still at the top too, but no, our top end. But we were on, probably. I think we showed like at the rate study like 8 comparable cities, and I think we were like the 5th or 6th highest for water rates as far as some of our neighboring comparables. So, yeah, it might be a good, worthwhile endeavor to do a rate study, because I pretty much just update the little spreadsheets in there and stuff. That's pretty much from their rate study and some of their spreadsheet calculations. I pretty much just do it on my own now, but it may not hurt to have an external looker and some of those factors. But and I think even when some of the water improvements were being talked the other night, I think one of the things in the timeline suggested was a rate study somewhere in there. So when you've got millions of dollars of infrastructure planned, so
You just want to
something
be
to
able
think
to
about. So
charge the right amount.
yeah.
Right.
So,
Can we just have staff call the other towns and see if we get anywhere with them, and then if we don't, then do the rate study?
I think that'd almost be, that's more of the summary or almost like a first piece of it. The rate study will take things that a lot more in depth or whatever.
Right.
But it's definitely something we can do on our own first, is just to see where we're at. If we're out of
Yeah, the
those same
ballpark.
8, are we now down at
bottom.
the bottom? Where we really our rates have actually lagged, or have we bubbled to the top somehow, or
So what are you talking? You talking like 20,000 for a study, or what are you talking?
oh gosh, I have no idea. Do you remember?
You're probably not too far off. I was going to say 15 to 20,000.
I think I'd like Kathleen's approach. Let's just do a informal phone call,
Okay.
find out, kind of get a feel for it. And then if we think we're way too high, maybe then we have to do some kind of a more in-depth study to
I would
determine
agree.
how come we're so high.
I would worry if we were too low. What you want to be able to do is fund your infrastructure. So.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's...
If
yeah.
anything, if we're on the low side, it might show we have not room to just charge people whatever, but just that it's valid. And like Mike said, we need to
Right.
fund our infrastructure, and that's the way we
Right.
do with our utility rates. So
Okay.
And you've got enough things coming up here in the next number of years between a tower rehab and a water treatment plant and a couple of
Wells and
wells,
stuff.
and plus all the maintenance that
Right.
we're talking about. I just don't want to see you
Mhm.
underfunded.
Right.
But, we'll let you guys make that decision. But if that's the council's direction, we can certainly start some survey work and
Okay.
kind of see where other cities are at. And we'll ask about not just their residential, but all their commercial and schools and stuff. And hopefully we can get some sort of idea of what they have as total
Maybe.
income, revenue from there.
yeah.
And stuff, because a city like Mound's going to be different than us because our commercials pretty good compared to theirs, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So
Maybe while we're at it, we'll be bringing the sewer fund and surface water and stormwater. We'll just have staff ask what those utility
Sure.
rates are, if whether they're right online or if they got to ask some questions. But
Okay.
might as well just look at the
look at all the
utilities.
rates.
and-
Yeah.
Okay.
So.
Mound's going to be busy.
Yeah. So I think that's all I wanted to really emphasize, or try to at least get some feedback on tonight, and then this will be
Updated.
updated, and we'll bring back at in
Okay.
November, December, or probably a time or two to
Okay. To
finalize. Especially this is going to be the hardest one. It is every year. The water fund's just got the most going on. So
Yeah. Okay.
Have we thought, or has the city thought of switching to monthly billing on the water so people know what they're using and can still change behavior versus, you get your October statement and it's too late to change your behavior?
yeah, it's came up, but I mean, it almost would fall into looking at it more globally. I mean, obviously, monthly billing, it's more administrative time. You're cranking out bills all the time. I think cities that are larger tend to do that. They might have a utility billing staff, or department that almost just does that, or a subset of the finance department. Or maybe they contract some of the printing the bills out, or sorting and sending. So there's those type of
They'd
the
be
pro is
reading the meters, too.
yeah, and they're reading the meters. Yeah, so there's the pros is you give people more real time information, but really they can look at their meter anytime if they if they want. I know most people don't, but that's the trade-offs. Is there's more admin time, there's more public works time, there's just more costs.
I think that's something you should probably start planning for in the not so distant future. I know the financial software that we have is good, but I think we're at about the population where that particular brand is. Yeah. There's a tipping point where when you get to be a little bigger, that's not such a good financial package. And I know it's very cost effective. It's been reliable. We haven't had a lot of problems with it, but there are some missing pieces, and one of them is the utility thing. It's not the greatest. It works, but it's not the greatest. Yeah, it's a little labor intensive for us, but.
The one nice thing about our system too is with the new meters that we're putting in, there in the future we will be able to do radio reads through main transmitter if we ever want to do a central. So I mean, all they'd have to do is hit the computer and they can read everything monthly. All new meters are doing that, no matter what census, Itron, whichever ones are all doing that. So ours will be equipped that way as we start replacing these that are end of life. So eventually it'll be a very easy thing to do with once all this gets in place.
I think it's something to shoot for.
Yeah, and if nothing else, just water and sewer is quarterly flat fee, but water could go out every month then. Okay.
Potentially,
Okay. All right. What else does staff need from us tonight?
I mean, the main things was is the information on the capital list look like what we've talked about. I think that's a yes. Does increasing the rates maybe at a little higher rate or maybe on the higher tiers, is that something council can get behind? And then I guess the other piece was looking at some of the other comparable cities' rates and seeing where we actually fit, and if our idea right now, if that seems right or if we need to reevaluate. So I think,
and then plugging the ARPA dollars into
and then the ARPA dollars
CIP,
we talked about.
So okay.
So
any other questions or comments? All right. So we'll move on to the pavement management plan.
I'm 12 minutes over, Brian.
I'm a good talker.
Matt's got to hustle. I'll just.
I think the city administrator search will not take 20 minutes. Okay. There you go.
I'll just give a brief introduction as Matt's getting ready here. This is Matt Indahar with WSB, and he's been working closely with Gary Peters, Allison, and myself, and other city staff on putting this pavement management report together. The council's been hearing about this. You hear it when every project comes up. We refer back to the data we gathered at the 2017 pavement management report. So it's in your packet for viewing. Matt's got kind of a truncated presentation to go through the high points of it, and then just kind of have a discussion with council. No actions requested tonight from the council. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Adam. As Adam stated, I'm just going to go through a quick overview of the report that was provided to you guys and look at a few of the highlights. But first, I'll give a quick background on who I am and a little bit about why I did this report. So I have been working for WSB for about 2 years now as a pavement engineer and construction project manager. And before that, I had about 10 years in with MnDOT in District 3 as a project manager and construction engineer, developing projects 5-10 years out for the State Transportation Investment Plan, Capital Highway Improvement Plan, doing pavement forensics, developing scope, schedule, budget, and bringing the projects through into construction and understanding pavement, road structure, what needs work, what doesn't work, what's the most efficient way to manage a transportation system. So that's a little bit about the background of me. We can look at what we provided the city of Minnetrista here in the report. In July, myself and a few inspectors went out and walked all of the pavement in Minnetrista, all of the bituminous pavement, approximately 50 miles worth, and we evaluated all that using a pavement software where we input the stresses and a few other things I'll get into a little bit. But based off of that, the overall weighted average of your roads, your PCI is your pavement condition index. So that's basically a grade of all of your stresses, 100 being perfect new pavement, 0 being not even a gravel road, I don't know, something you can't drive. So after we ran all the numbers in the software, your current average weighted PCI is approximately 80.1, which is up slightly from 2017 when we did this report last, which was 78. So that's a generally good indication that your budget and your maintenance has been in line with keeping your roads at a good level, quality that most people will appreciate driving. The point this in a certain direction.
Right.
There.
So when we went out there and looked at all the pavement segments, there's basically 3 factors that go into your pavement condition index. The type of distress, I think there's 20 different distresses that go into this program. Alligator cracking, block cracking, bump sags, and whatever else you can have. And then, so we look at your pavement, we indicate the type of distress, then we look at the severity. Is it high, medium, low? Through the software we use, there's different criteria, like if it's a longitudinal crack, if it's greater than a 1/4 inch in width, then you're up into the medium. If it's over a 1/2 inch, you're in a high severity. The higher the severity, the more your PCI is going to drop because of that single distress. And then we look at the extent of distress. So is the road 25% alligator cracking? That's going to be a significant percentage of that road, so that's going to drop your score as well. So it's basically pretty straightforward. We try to make it as empirical as we can, but all we're doing is evaluating the surface of the pavement. We can't see what's underneath, what happened in the past, if the structure is bad. That requires more forensic work, like coring or talking with Gary and figuring out what he's done to fix the pavement in the past and get a better sense of what needs to be done. So I wanted to kind of preface some of the stuff in this report. It's not the be-all, end-all. This is what you need to do for each segment. We evaluated every segment, we rated them all, but there's more work to be done to actually dive into. If we indicated that it needed to be reconstructed or rehab, there's more investigation that needs to be done to decide between which one of those fixes is going to be the most effective and make the most sense. But
For instance, like if you say it has a rating of 65 and you think it's going to be a mill and overlay, you do a coring to determine whether it actually is a mill and overlay versus a reclamation.
right.
Okay.
Yeah, and it could. I mean, there's a ton of factors, and then there's also like the people along that road, if they are accepting to that type of fix or something like that. There's a lot of political things. I mean, you guys deal with all this too, so I'm not going to get into it too deep. But yeah, that's so basically we evaluated every road. That's what we did.
There.
Okay. Based on our evaluations, this is kind of how it all broke out. So basically 50% were in that excellent category of 85 to 100, where you are going to do corrective maintenance, which means just kind of keep an eye on them, do crack seals if you need to, but it's very little investment at that point. Then around 25%, 23% was at the good category, which is preventative maintenance, which is where we recommend things like chip seals, box seals, something that's going to help stop oxidization and stop water from getting below the pavement into your subgrade. The rest, 25, is in fair or to fail, which is where you're going to get into your more expensive fixes like mill overlays, reclaims, reconstructs, which is where I would really look more into pavement forensics to determine those three last categories to decide what your fix is going to be. So to kind of talk more about what fix is the correct fix and maybe some factors to consider. The first one on there, the box seal, chip seal, is something that a lot of communities are starting to use. I know you guys had used the chip seal in the past and had kind of mixed results with some spalling or some grappling. This is kind of an upgraded version of that, where you do the standard chip seal and then you come back and box seal over the top of it.
Over the top of the chip seal.
Yes,
Mhm.
and that locks in your chips.
Makes it smoother.
Not so much smoother, but you're basically sandwiching your chips between
Right.
two sticky materials. It doesn't end up being sticky, but then you also get a product that looks like a mill and overlay, which is very well received by the residents, and we're seeing a lot less issues with that coming out, rattling, popping, whatever. The one thing, like talking to Gary when we were out, the one caveat I would put on this is like in your developments, I would not do this until after at least the majority of the houses have been done, because it still can get ripped up with skid steers or whatever activities the builders are doing out on the road. So just caveat with that, because it's not adding structure to your pavement, but it's helping prolong your pavement. It's a cheap fix that helps extend the life of your pavement, preventing you from paying more down the road.
Well, it extends the life of the pavement, so you're not replacing your roads sooner than
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
And then the next one is mill and overlay. Generally, we like to do a couple of box seal, chip seals to extend the life of the pavement, but when you're starting to see more cracking or larger cracking, then you can fix with a box seal or a chip seal. Then you're going to look into doing a mill and overlay, because you're not fixing your problem anymore with the chip seal. And this is going to rejuvenate the pavement, minimal cost. You're also not going to be doing this if you are looking at doing utility work, water, storm, sanitary. That's not your option, but it's a good option to consider. Keeps your costs down. Pretty effective for rejuvenating your road. The next one, reclamation, grinding up your existing pavement, mixing it into the subgrade, helps add some structure and some uniformity to your road, and then you pave over the top of that. It's quick, cheaper than full reconstruction, and the only issue between full reconstruct and full depth reclaim is that reclaim, you're still not getting into any of your subsurface utilities, water, sewer, storm. So those are some things to consider. And then the reconstruct is full rip up of road. Look at this when you have pavements that are failing because of subsurface, like the sand and gravel below your road is not adequate to support. You're getting a lot of bumps, sags, a lot of other issues that you find if you do boring or boring of the subsurface materials. Use also when you have kind of a change in use of that road, like this road was built rural, now it's developed up, and you want to put curb and gutter or whatever else. So I think that was all I wanted to say about those. Any questions about when?
Do you have numbers then for, so if the rating, PSI rating is 80 to 100, you do the fog seal. If it's, I mean, what are 75,
So,
isn't it 75 to 100?
These are, the middle column is the PCI that we recommend.
Yeah.
And then the recommended strategy on the right would be,
Yeah.
is that what you're asking?
Yeah. So
So
you
that's the starting point. So that's
Right.
where you would look at this, you'd start to do some pavement forensics,
Mhm.
look at the road history, and then make decisions.
Mhm. So corrective maintenance and preventative maintenance. So corrective maintenance would be the fog seal.
No, corrective maintenance is your road is good, you maybe have a few minor hairline cracks, and you would crack seal.
Crack seal. Okay.
And then preventative maintenance is the
fog seal.
fog seal,
Chip seal. Okay. All right. Mhm.
So we took all the PCI segment data and we ran a few scenarios. 2 of them were budget driven, and then we did 2 PCI driven. So scenario 1 is just the standard one we do. This is if you had 0 road management budget and you just let your roads go for 5 years. Your roads would deteriorate to 70, 69. Then we looked at your current budget for 5 years, and it was $4,425,000. And at that budget, it looks like your PCI will drop very slightly. So that's indicating that your budget is probably there, plus maybe some inflation or adding each year slightly. The number 3 is probably the Cadillac scenario, where you're trying to maintain every segment over 80. Yeah.
That's in a perfect world, right?
Perfect.
And what planet do you live on?
Well, it's just
Right,
throw that
just
in
to
there
show you,
because,
yeah.
Sometimes residents ask, like, why isn't every road as good as some so and so's road?
Right.
It's unachievable. The budget's out of control. So the final option we looked at is if you wanted to basically maintain the average PCI that you have right now, which is just maintain an average over or at 80, and that's showing a slight increase in budget.
Yeah. Okay.
Any questions on those scenarios?
Nope.
Okay. And then this last one is just kind of a generic slide we throw in just to emphasize again that investing a little bit to maintain your road infrastructure is going to save bigger costs down at the end. Once you start dropping into the 60s and below, you really start seeing the cost of a project go up. If you can maintain the lower cost, like on that second graph, and just keep your pavement extending out, you're saving a lot of money per that road section over the life of it. So that's all I had for presentation. Is there any questions on the report or any other questions? Yes.
Okay, it's not a question. I want to compliment whoever wrote this. This is the cleanest, clearest report I think I've seen this year. This is absolutely a fabulous report. Very easy to read, very clean. Read right down to the font size was really good. Really good.
Very pleased. Appreciate that.
Thorough. Yeah.
The only other comment I made, and this came up in my conversation with Ann, we were talking about, there's one page in there that talks about future budgets, 23, 24, 25, and they're all the same dollar amount. I think $900,000.
Yeah,
And-
page 18.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Oh, 35, yeah.
she said, why is that? And I said, well, that's a good question. Very good question. So our goal when we started all this incremental changing to our pavement management plan was to get up to $900,000. That was a recommendation from WSB as we were looking at the PCIs and all the other things moving forward. And we've reached that goal. Now, if you guys want to go higher, we're at city staff or engineers, we're not going to change it up, even though you can, and you probably should. But for now, that 900,000 is where you're at. So we've been going up, 100 to 150, no matter, kind of depending on what year it is, 125,
Yeah.
150 every year, it kind of ratcheting
Yeah.
on up.
No,
So-
it's the goal, went back from 2012 was
Right.
to get to 900,000, and back then it seemed like such a far
Yeah, it's
away
like-
goal. And now we actually are almost
Here we
there.
are. Here we are. So,
The other thing is too, back in 2012, 2011, when they had determined the 900,000, now that same 900,000 would probably be closer to $1 million. So we need to be looking at that. So we should actually, in today's dollars, probably be closer to $1 million.
Yeah, I think it was more than that.
And yeah,
I think you were more than that. What I did out if we were adding 100,000 per year. And if the number was 6.7 that's needed to keep everything above 80, or keep it at the 80.1. So if you add 100 to those numbers, you get 5.3. It still doesn't get us to 6.7, but it's closer than the 4.4. So we need to keep adding more money into it. We also have more roads.
Yeah,
Right.
that's another factor to
Yeah.
consider is if
Yeah.
you get more pavement, that
you have
ends
to
up
add.
Right.
relating back to more maintenance costs
Mhm.
to maintain that. And we figured in here just like a 3% inflation too, so it's not just inflation that you guys are fighting, it's also the deterioration of the roads, because you have a lot in the excellent to good category, but even with proper maintenance, I mean, it's going to eventually
Right,
come down.
right. And we have more roads.
Right. Now, another question. Are state roads, is it a mix of state roads and private roads, or is it?
For this,
Yeah.
no, this is only the city of Minnetrista.
You may be asking
State aid.
State aid roads.
Oh, yeah.
Funding source, yeah.
So where was that chart where it listed all the
That's in the I think
PCIs?
the table B or appendix B.
Yeah, and do you know what page that was on?
I think it's in the 30s.
It's 49 of your packet.
Okay, because some of the roads listed are, what maybe you're referring to, are MSA roads.
Yeah.
So, like North Arm is MSA, I know, Hunter's Trail is MSA. So some of these that are listed in here are MSA roads. So I suppose you could take those out or put them in a separate list.
Well, basically,
maybe.
we have that 5-year look ahead has basically roughly $5.5 million
Right.
of local dollars,
Right,
this tax
right.
collected from our residents, but then there could be some MSA dollars added in too if the council allocates those to any
Right,
of these roads.
but
So-
that's what I'm saying, is this chart, maybe what we should do is break out the MSA roads, and then, so we can see the MSAs, then we know what dollars we have to spend there, and then we see the local roads that we have to pay for out of our levy.
Yeah, Brian, say what you just said though again.
So, we're levying, we're almost at that $900,000
Yeah, right.
here, so times 5 is $4.5 million. But MSA, we get $400,000 a year in construction dollars. So, depending on if we, use that on how we use that can be incorporated into the mix also.
Well, but what I'm saying is you can't use it on all of the roads or any of the roads.
No, they got to be eligible.
They
gotta
have to be
state aid
MSA
eligible roads. Yep.
eligible.
But I
so,
understand what you're
yeah.
saying, that actually we should get a chart like that. That'd be
Yeah.
a good chart,
Yeah.
so that we actually know how much more that would be, because then that's going to be more than 5.3, and might get us a lot closer to 6.7.
Correct.
Yes,
Yep, yep.
yeah, I see what you're saying.
Okay,
Yeah.
good.
Mhm.
But I guess I'm making the assumption that the council wants to keep the roads at 80. a very quick one.
I would think so.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
We, three of us do.
yeah, yeah.
It's all it takes.
And so I think bottom line is we're going to, so the thought I think back in 2012 was once you reach that 900, then that's going to be enough to maintain our roads. But I think as you pointed out, no, we're still going to have to add that 100 or 150,000 every year. I mean, it's, unless you start, yeah.
Yeah, that's another reason why it's always good to kind of continually reevaluate your road system. I think you guys are kind of on a 3-year cycle.
Right.
Because this funding is always going to be a moving target, and your roads are always changing, so
Yeah.
it's always good to get a handle on that every once in a while.
And we are on a 3-year cycle, except for this time we're on a 4-year cycle. So I think I had this conversation with the mayor. We have to make sure as a city that we plan for this about a year and a half before you're going to do it. Because it generally is best to, you can't do these evaluations until like May. Is that right?
Well,
It depends on the weather.
And I can get on schedule, but I think it would be best if we can get out here before maintenance gets done.
So you can see them before they got
early in the year,
fixed.
'cause I went back out with Gary a few
Right.
roads, and things had changed a little bit. He had done some maintenance, so the PCI had gone up, but we wanted to make it look like it actually was, so we had to drop some of them down. But yeah, it can be done.
Plus, it takes a long time to walk 50 miles.
Yeah. Takes some time. But it can be done whenever there's
Yeah.
not.
Got to get Gary to walk
need
those 50 miles.
We need enough advance so that we can schedule.
Yeah.
I'd just say let's try not to do another 4-year cycle when we're supposed
Yeah.
to be 3. So
It's just, yeah.
3 years from this cycle, 21. So you want to have a 24 report. I don't know when you start planning to do a 24 one so it's accurate.
Well, you'd have to start planning in 23
Yeah.
for budget purposes
Right.
and then get the contracts in place so you
Right.
can do it in the spring of 24.
Yeah.
I think this is really good. So basically, the 50,000 extra that we added in, I think we should leave it for now, and then again before December, if we want to remove it or reduce it, we can. But how much? So last year we did 725. Is that correct?
It's either 700 or 725, and then it was originally going to be 825, and then when the council added in the extra 50, it's at 875.
Okay, so we added in 100, and then
Well, yeah, or basically to the levy it was
Right.
875, and then we're going to look at fund balance for the other 50,000 or whatever.
right.
Yeah, so
But so for the levy we added 100, but we're thinking of possibly 150. So that's something we can look at.
Yes.
oh, from year over year. I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Well,
yeah, yeah.
For
From-
for budget purposes for 2022, I'm saying we added the 50, making it 875.
Yeah, so-
do we want to stay there, or do we want to go back to the 825?
No, I want to stay there.
Yeah,
Well, what's the downside?
well.
It's
the-
1%.
It's
to the levy,
1%
basically.
higher.
So right now we're at
than the-
5.5% increase versus the 4.5%.
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah, and I had worked out the numbers. I thought the numbers actually come out to be so the tax rate technically isn't any greater than it is right now.
Yeah, tax rate drops a little bit because our
Because
total
home values
market
right
value
now.
tax
So
capacity.
my vote
went up.
is to leave it alone and leave it there because we need lots.
Well, we'll wait. The statements we mailed out in November, the truth in taxation notices and stuff, so we haven't gotten any of that feedback back. You know, if
Yeah.
anyone says they can notice a distinct difference between a 5.5% increase and a 4.5%, I really.
But keep in mind, the new homes that have come online.
Yeah, eats up about
we-
3% of it,
Eats
yeah.
up about 3%.
Yeah.
So it's actually like a 2.5%
Yeah, yeah.
increase, which is very reasonable, I think.
I-
But keep in mind, all these new homes are going to add to our roads down the pike. So, okay, I think I would agree. I think we're comfortable leaving it at 875 right now, and then the other thing we need to do then, probably when did we start last? I think in February we started talking about roads for the following year. So. We'll want to take this information and start talking February of 22, what we want to do for 23. Or do you have maintenance dollars
we have some maintenance stars, but Allison and I have already discussed some of the stuff, and we've already been developing some plans and
Okay.
with Adam and stuff. We do have some stuff on the project list already that we can start throwing out there. So,
Okay, so when will that come back to the council?
I mean, for February, we could probably do it by then. I'm so assuming we could probably have some rough stuff by February for sure.
And what about maintenance for 22?
Yep, so we have that list for 22 overlays. We have a semblance of a 5-year capital improvement plan, which was referenced in your packet.
Yeah.
We just didn't want to bring that today because
Okay.
that's talking about the next 5 years of projects. It's going to be a long conversation.
Okay.
And we wouldn't even have to lock anything in, but that would be then with this as the background,
Right.
that's our guide for the next 5. And
Or
we
3
already
or
have some good, or 3.
Yeah.
Obviously 22 is good to go in terms of the local. We can still look at overlays for 22. And then we can talk about locking in the 23 by February. We don't have to lock that in with this kind of 5-year CIP, but we just want to get that conversation going at
Right.
upcoming work session well in advance of
Yeah.
February.
Well, the 22 overlays we took a look at the last work session as part of the budget.
Yep.
We have the recommended. I mean, I think we have 22 and 23. And obviously, the council can always change and massage it a little bit. But I think we've got the way I would look at it. We pretty much have 2022 roads ready to go, and we're looking at years 2 through 4, 2 through 5, or whatever is what.
Well, I just think maybe sooner. So if we leave it at 875, that helps a little bit. Plus, I think John had said we should also consider taking $50,000 out of our general fund budget,
Yeah,
our
we'll know more by
balance.
the end of the year as far as what our
Right.
general fund's going to be.
What we can take out. So then I think we should still revisit 22 overlays and or any maintenance. Because then we'll have a better idea in terms of how much dollars we'll have. For sure.
Yeah, like in February, January,
Right.
February 22. I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Because I don't want to leave 22 off the table for any overlays or any other maintenance or and then say, well, let's wait until 23 because there's some roads in here that maybe we could save for the next 10 or 12 years.
Yeah, so just to clarify, you want to, in advance of February, lock in some overlay projects for 22, and that would be in the next upcoming couple work sessions, correct?
No. I think if we did it in February for mill and overlays, I think we're okay.
Okay.
Timing-wise, is that...
Yeah, I mean, in terms of getting the plans are a lot less, the plans and specs are a
Right.
lot less
I think
intensive.
the mayor,
so-
you may be suggesting we pretty much. I think at the last meeting had that enchanted area of about 400,000 we're going to do. But are you saying maybe if we have a little money left over, we do a little more, or is that what you're?
Well, so bring that back because we're doing Jennings Cove, right?
correct.
Okay, and we've talked about Enchanted, but let's look at these numbers and make sure that that's what in staff you can weigh in too. Of course, is that still the action or the road we want to? Is that still what we need to do?
Yeah.
And then also looking at the numbers, can we do more than just that?
Okay.
Is that
Yep.
a good plan?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
For sometime in early.
Yeah.
February.
February.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Not in the next few weeks. We have other things. So
Good. Yeah.
as long as we can get that done for the 22 construction season.
Oh,
Yeah. Because we already know that Jennings Cove, and that takes longer. So,
It does.
all right. Other comments, questions? Okay. All right. I think that's it. This is very good. Very good. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah. So next, city administrator search firm discussion.
Yes,
Ally.
thank you, Mayor. So at the council's direction at the last meeting, I reached out to 5 executive search firms that other cities have used within the past couple of years. The proposals are in your staff memo from David Drown and Associates, GovHR, and Baker Tilly. 2 of the groups declined for various reasons. In addition to interviewing the firms, we wanted to get some direction on some interview questions, so we included some of our thoughts and suggestions for questions. And we're planning, and the firms know this, to have interviews on October 18th prior to the city council work session. So we would have 1 at 2, 1 at 3, 1 at 4, and those have yet to be scheduled. So staff recommends just interviewing all 3 firms. There weren't huge differences in price. There were different variations after looking at the proposal, but I don't see any harm in interviewing the 3 firms and seeing who the council kind of connects with the best. So what we really need is you guys to give us to the okay to start scheduling the interviews, and any suggestions on additional questions you didn't like that we provided. So with that, we can take any questions.
Well, I think we should interview all 3.
Yes.
There's no harm.
You know, there's no harm. I mean, in fact, it's too bad we don't have, more, but still. If in the meantime there's another firm that comes to mind that you contact, feel free to invite
those
them.
Those are really the 5 that past cities have interviewed and selected for interviews. I looked at a few surrounding cities. So and there's GovHR. They're not really specialized in Minnesota. The other 2 are. So there's differences between all of them, but they're pretty close in comparison, which I included on the proposal summary chart.
So be sure you contact the other 2 council members that aren't here and let them know that we're going to be starting, you think, an hour per?
I would say so.
2, 3, and 4.
2, 3, and so we'd start at 2 o'clock and get here around 1:50.
Okay. So let them know.
And it'd be right in here.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Let them know that so that they can put that on their calendars.
Yeah, we'll tell each of these firms that they got about 45 minutes to an hour.
Yeah.
They're going to send their
Yeah.
best sales, so to speak, approach to this. They're trying to get our business. So.
Yep.
And then another question: will we be able to discuss? I don't want to say closed, but how can we discuss who we would want to hire without?
Maybe a question for Ron.
Yeah, we kind of did this, if the mayor recalls, we kind of did this when we were trying to figure out which engineering firm to hire when we were doing all these projects.
And
right?
I know the
Yeah,
vote. I know the vote has to be public. That I know for sure.
Correct, but we were using search firm A is this, and search firm B is this, and search firm C is this.
Public data.
So we talked about it in regards of A, B, and C, and then once we decided which one, we revealed which one that was.
Okay.
So we're talking about, without saying their names, which is kind of protecting them and us a little bit, but you're still having a public discussion because I don't think you can discuss this stuff in private.
Okay. Okay.
So that was the method that we used to figure out. I think we had 6.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I thought we had at least. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So
5 or 6, 7.
Mm-hmm.
I think we could. I think that was our approach. We could
Okay.
probably use the same thing.
Okay.
You might guess.
All right. Questions. What questions do you?
I went through the interview questions. I think they're excellent questions. I tried to think of something else for a recruitment firm, but I think your questions are good.
Okay.
I have a question. I'd kind of like to ask them, how have they worked with council? Maybe that's kind of in here somewhere. It's kind of,
Question 2, I mean, you could kind of elaborate when you ask that question too, because it does hit on that. Same with question 5. There's, how often do you communicate, what information and input. You could ask them to elaborate on what you're specifically trying to get. Is that what you're trying to get?
Yeah, I just want to kind of get a feel for how they've worked with councils before. And I don't want to just tell them how to do it. I want to find out how they've done it.
Sure.
So that we can then decide if that's something we would want.
I think the questions hit on it pretty, and if they don't, you can always follow up with if they're not quite answering it clearly enough.
And then timeline, there was a chart in here for timeline. One said 14 weeks, another one said 12 to 14, and another one said 17. So
I wrote this out. February 2023, then one was late January. GovHR was late January, and Baker Tilly said it was the fastest at January 10th.
I just want to find out how realistic these are and make sure that I don't want to rush it. I'd rather get the right individual here versus getting somebody here quickly. But I guess why the big why 12 to 17. That's, 5 weeks, I guess.
I don't know. David Drone, their timeline could have even not started until November or
okay.
because their timeline.
That's something we can ask them too.
Yeah, but I'm sure, if we wanted it completed, they might be able to.
Okay.
I don't know why their timelines are lined out how they would. They may post longer with one firm or,
a lot of times I think they're trying to buy themselves some flexibility because it may depend on the number of candidates they get or where the candidates are, how hard it is to get them in. And then when you're dealing with winter, we did this ourselves. We had, I think, to fill Allie's position, we had a couple people from out of state and then got a snowstorm or some crap like that, like in December. Wasn't that the case, Brian?
Yeah.
It's like, okay, I guess we're delaying those a week, So, they're not going to travel. I don't want anybody traveling through a snowstorm. You might want to think twice about hiring that person if they want to come here through 8 inches of snow and it's blizzard conditions out there. So, I think there's just some flexibility for them. And just like all HR processes, you just don't know until you start doing it.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
Yep. So if you guys are okay with that, I'll move
And I would
forward.
assume, would they outline too how the candidates are going to be interviewed then? Or is that something the council can decide?
Probably.
Well, at the end of the day, the council can decide what they choose. The proposals hit on it a little bit.
Yeah, okay. We'll have to see, but if we get 50 applicants, I'm sure we're not going to want to review 50.
They have a screening process when there's that many.
And so we'll have to see how many applications the council wants to review, and then ultimately how many interviewees we want to, how many people we want to actually interview.
Right, for the, first interview and second interview, if you just want to be a part of the final or, I think they would do whatever the council wishes, whether that be you participate in everything, just participate in the, 2 finalists, but,
And then one thing I was talking to staff about is I think key members of staff need to be involved in the interview process.
Oh, good.
Because they are going to be working.
They're the people that deliver them.
Right. So
True.
Those are just some thoughts. Okay. All right.
Also question, do we want this on the work session agenda to chat about for an approval on the regular meeting? Or do we want to hold off till November? Wasn't how
we should put it on the work session.
Yeah.
We're all
Just throw
going
it
to
on
be
the-
here, so.
Say that again?
We're all going to be here anyway.
I know, that's what I was thinking.
And the other
so.
thing is, it's fresh in our memories.
Yeah.
So I think it would be better to discuss it at the work session, and then if you need a resolution, we can add it to the council meeting.
Yep. Yeah, I
If
could
you,
just,
if you determine who it is you want to hire.
Right.
yeah, if you didn't need more time to
Right.
contemplate. Okay. That sounds good. That's all I need.
I think that's all
Wasn't
there
20
is.
minutes. Way to go.
Woohoo, look at me. I'm not quite a talker.
All right. Like Brian.
I know. I have no stories to tell.
All right. With that, then we can be adjourned. Is there a motion?
So moved.
All right. Thank you. And
Second.
so Kathleen made the motion and seconded that. All those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion passes 3-0.